Hi, I'm Julie Hart, and welcome to What Dogs Have Taught Me. To be in dog rescue for an extended amount of time takes a special kind of person. Part stable and grounded, lots of compassion for dogs and people, skilled to navigate all the weird scenarios and circumstances we are involved in with people that either want to have dogs or that want to give up dogs. And a dash of crazy to even think we can do this. Please join me in welcoming one of those special people, Lanya Androlewicz. Lanya has been president of People's Anti-Cruelty Association, the rescue I do most of my volunteering for, in Albuquerque, New Mexico for close to 20 years. I've been volunteering for PACA for the past 12 years, so I've known Lanya a good while. When you do dog rescue, you find out who you can count on and who you can't pretty quick. You also find out who is trustworthy and reliable and will support you through some difficult decisions, and that may mean not making all potential adopters or volunteers happy. Lanya has always trusted and supported me and the calls I make about which dogs to take in and which not, where to put them, how to help them, and who to adopt the dogs to. Just this week, we're both combining talents as we try to catch a stray dog and her puppy. During this podcast, we talk about challenges, successes, the good and the bad, and how we navigate the world of dog rescue. But first, a word from our sponsor, my dog training business, Heart to Heart Canine. I am continuing my monthly online learning, and in July, I will be talking about reactivity, specifically reactivity based in fear. But often this fear isn't just about the object, dog, or human coming closer. It's about the fear that the dog's handler will not protect the dog. This course will focus on what simple things can help your dog feel like you will protect them and how to tell your dog reacting isn't his job. Check it out at the online learning tab on my website, hearttoheartcanine.com, HEARTCANINE.com. So I'm here with my friend, colleague, rescue, partner?
Yes.
Lanya Androlewicz.
All true statements.
And we've been doing rescue together for 12 years now.
Oh my gosh.
Which seems like crazy.
It does. That means that we were together for 6 years before you introduced me to Josh.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I'm also Lanya's matchmaker for her husband. So I not only match dogs to people, I match people to people.
And that was a good one. This is true.
I met you. Well, I didn't meet you at the first adoption event I went to for PACA because you weren't there that day.
Interesting. I was there most times during that time.
Maybe you had just run out to do something or went to get lunch.
Had we talked before? And I told you where to go, or did you just drop in on us?
Well, I don't know if I've ever told you this before, but I was like shopping rescues. I wanted a foster-based rescue. Okay. And so I looked up PACA and a few others, and I went to an adoption event like I was an adopter.
Okay.
I was, undercover.
And I wasn't at that one, or I was? Because I think the kids and Kevin were with you when I met you.
Oh, maybe you were there.
Yeah, they were. You were. The whole family came.
Or maybe I came back with them.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Okay.
But I do remember meeting Tara, and you guys had a bunch of different equipment on dogs, and you were honest about the dog's problems, right? You were like, well, this is so-and-so, he does this, and this is so-and-so, he does that. Which I liked. And you guys also called me back, which other rescues did not.
Oh, now that's one of my things.
They lost out, right?
They did. I do. And I hear that. That's one of my major kind of complaints that I hear that I wouldn't when I call people back. Mostly people looking for help is that I've called 5 groups and you're the first person that actually has emailed or called me back.
Yeah.
And my response to that is, I may not be able to help you, but I'm going to tell you why I can't. I'm not just going to ignore you. Just so they can kind of have some understanding as to maybe why some of these other people aren't calling them back. It's probably for the same reason, which is that we are always full. But there are other ways that we can help, which I think we've done pretty successfully in helping people rehome their own dogs as long as they can hold on to them. I mean, do you think we do that well?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, and jumping ahead a little, but yeah, I think we're one of the only rescues that take like owner surrenders. That keeps dogs out of shelters.
Totally does. And that is kind of a niche. I think some of the other, there are some groups will never take owner surrender. She only pulls from shelters. Yeah. And I think there's the positive in that is that they come out fully vetted. Yeah. You truly are helping a dog that, potentially could be euthanized. And we all know that we don't really believe in the shelter environment, although shelters are necessary evils. They have their place. So there are lots of people that really believe in that. And many, many, many years ago, before you, she used to really primarily run adoption clinic. Her name was Cynthia, and she was very good friends with Margaret. So Margaret and Cynthia kind of indoctrinated me into the PACA experience and kind of what to expect. But Cynthia at one point made a case for shifting to that and only taking dogs from the shelter. And my kind of rebuttal was, but we take donations from the public, and I feel like we have some level of obligation to help the direct public before their dogs go into the shelter. And that we know that if someone has, a 15-year-old dog that just had their human die and the family, there just wasn't a plan or it was unexpected, do we really want that dog to have to suffer that experience? No, we want them to kind of go straight in. So,
well, or Morgan's recent encounter, right? Someone found a stray dog that knew she did dog rescue.
Right.
And we took that dog in. Turned out she was pregnant. And now we have 9 dogs. But those dogs would potentially go to the shelter. And since we're foster-based, it doesn't really require any resource. We're not boarding the dogs. We're not paying for a lot of expenses besides vetting for those dogs. So, I mean, to me, it's fine as long as we check them out and make sure they're what the people say they are.
True. A very important point of, I think, what we do and what we do very well.
Yeah, so what would be PACA's, if you had to make a tagline or a couple ethical statements of what we try to achieve?
Well, I mean, I think one just easy thing that people apply to lots of different things is we want quality and not quantity. So quality of the adoption, meaning the best possible fit than just a volume of dogs. And so, we're all volunteer based with no paid employees, and none of us are eating because we're adopting dogs, right? This is not our business. Right. So we're not incentivized just to move, adoption fee, try to keep that money coming in. It's more, we have pulled dogs out of complete hell, and I'm not trying to let them slip back in there. Any person can adopt from the shelter. I don't know if there's any requirements. I mean, now there's not even a fee. Right. You don't even have to be able to afford. So it's just, I feel like that's really sad because some of those dogs have just got themselves to a safe space where they have shelter, food, and water, and is not guaranteed that they're going to continue to have that. And I think that's just one of my personal guarantees. Some of these dogs have come so far with us, especially some of the really fearful dogs or dogs from the hoarding cases. I mean, this is a very kind of special placement that they need to continue to thrive, and we don't want to put them somewhere where they're going to slip back.
And that's one reason why I chose PACA. I mean, I didn't know the depth of what you guys did when I joined, but I was like, okay, well, this is the best fit for me, right? So I'm started fostering, and I'm trying to think. I mean, Margaret was so just so everyone knows, Margaret was a core volunteer for how long? 20 some years.
Almost 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
And she died how many years ago now? 3?
More than that. I think it was 2018.
Wow.
Which we didn't think we were going to recover from that, honestly. I didn't. Margaret and I would always say, we were only doing it still because the other person was doing it. Honestly, she's like, girl, if you're out, I'm out.
I'm out.
You can't be out. And I'm like, no, I know. And that's just kind of one of the things is that you kind of can't get out. I mean.
Oh, dude, I know.
You can't.
I tried.
I know. And you just get looped back in. And I think it's just because you have to have some level. First of all, you have to have some love of dogs. And then you have to have this kind of empathy that doesn't let you turn a blind eye anymore to the things that you know that you can help with. So I totally respect, like, sometimes you're more involved than others. And instead of getting like frustrated at that, it's just like, I'm going to take what I can get, right? Like you got to respect people's boundaries.
Yeah.
And so it's just sometimes it's too much. And also if we're spread too thin, we don't do a good job at any of the things sometimes. So I'd rather have someone like fully invested in what they can do and not take it personally or think that anyone's a bad person because they're not able to help anymore or at all. And a lot of that was with fosters. We have a lot of fosters that pop in and out like that, right? I mean, they're great fosters and they do a whole series of dogs and they're like, I got to take a break or I got family stuff or, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
And instead of making that a negative exit, it's like, I'll see you when I see
Whenever.
you. Yeah. And then they felt fine and not like shunned or make them feel guilty. I have a whole phone Bible of people like that circle in and out.
Well, that's funny because the group of people I volunteered with in Virginia were similar, right? Not the whole rescue necessarily, but the group that I hung out with. And, we went and pulled from shelters and stuff like that with. We all wanted to make it good for the dog, but also the people volunteering for us and adopting for us. I've heard stories from other people that are fostering for rescue and they're like, well, the rescue doesn't let me choose what dog I want to foster. Or this dog is causing problems in my home.
Right.
Then the rescue they can't make you keep the dog, but they won't help the person maybe trade out or return the dog or whatever. And I think both of us are I view our fosters as gold. Right. So without them, we can't do anything because we're foster based and I want them to be able to succeed with the dog I give them, I guess.
Right.
Because if they have success, then they're more likely to foster again.
Absolutely. Yes. A great point.
And I want them to feel supported if they have any issues pop up, whether that be medical or behavior or something as simple as they're scared they're not eating their food or whatever it might be to the foster that's new. That can be pretty concerning if we're not there to help them.
It can. And also, I don't necessarily think it's probably not the person's fault intentionally, but that problem with that dog may happen no matter where we have them. Sometimes it can just be helpful to be addressed. And then the foster can feel like it's a positive win if they can overcome it. Oh, now he's eating perfectly. Oh, great. We just had to make a couple of tweaks.
Yeah.
And now that's the exact same thing we're going to tell the home, the adopter. Right. Now they're going to have some tools hey, this came up, which I think is one of the great things about adopting from a foster because they're in a home situation. I can't imagine after doing this so long, foster base, of just going to a shelter, pulling a dog and bringing it home.
Right.
That seems crazy to me. But I know people do it all the time. And just, full disclosure, I've had a death at my house and I've had near death experience with my own personal dogs. And so safety issues are number one for me. If someone is telling me that they have any kind of fear that because we know things can just escalate quickly. And I think maybe it's just the type of dogs that I had were powerful breeds that it could turn on a dime. I take that very seriously. And I don't want someone to have an experience like I had. So if you're scared, if there's a safety issue, if the dog's growling at your kid.
Yeah.
This is why we have emergency boarding.
Yeah.
So yes, we do not put in boarding but you have to have a backup plan as a shelter. As anyone in rescue responsibly, you have to have an emergency backup plan if something happens. What if someone had a fire?
Yeah.
What if there's a death in the family? They had to leave. There are emergencies that come up. So I think another huge issue with rescue is just service providers in general, like support service. So vets, right? We're all struggling with that. And then with the boarding facilities that are like sanitary, and we feel like the dogs are, you know, treated well in there, and they're going to be friendly with kind of what our needs are. And then, you know, always, I don't even like pet sitters or groomers or whatever. Like, we just have to have all of these tools in our bag, and we're constantly looking for the best tools and trying to be open to people that we might like to work with more than others.
Yeah.
And it's not always price. It's just simply not.
No, there's a lot of networking too. And building kind of your support network around. We use vets, and they give us a discount. So when I go in there, I'm always very aware of that fact. And I try to treat them with respect and kindness. And now I know them all by name. Right. You know, but... Right. And I get pretty good service. But yeah, it's important if you were representing a rescue and you're going into a vet they use, you know, just be courteous and try and get your dog's or cat's needs. We do dog rescue. We don't do the cat side. We have a cat side, but you are, because you're the president.
Well, I know about what they do, but I will say also that the cat side carries us in a lot of ways. Their footprint is much bigger. They have a totally separate system because they have PetSmart and do so much TNR, and there's just lots and lots of kittens that are found, and they get adopted instantly, and they're fully vetted before they go out, so their expenses aren't high. Our carrying costs, I think this is kind of one thing that we're going to have to talk about, and that a lot of foster-based private rescues that have no huge funding, they just rely on donations from the public, is that our costs for veterinary services are going up. And because we're not allowed to adopt out per our charter animals that are not sterilized, and now that we're waiting till 6 months, we are capturing a lot of holding costs there when we do puppies, especially. Yes. Because there's, you know, always it's just anything that can come up with the puppy, whether it be allergies or intestinal difficulty or whatever. It's like every time I walk through the door, I get a charge. And then on top of that, it's more. And I'm already barely breaking even on males and losing a few dollars on females with just the standard vetting, which is spay, neuter, microchip, rabies, heartworm test, and all of their puppy series, all their vaccines. So it's just like, what do you do? And I never want to tell someone not to go to the vet, but that's when all that good communication comes in is, hey, can you give me a call? Let's talk about what's going on with the dog. Do I already have some dewormer sitting on someone's counter that can be delivered? Can we do a food change? And I think you're really good at helping people kind of walk through some of that stuff, because granted, like, they're just freaked out. You know, my dog's throwing up or whatever, and obviously we'll do pyro tests and something. But if everything else looks kind of good, like, you kind of start to be able to do some triage based on my 25 years of being in rescue and talking to vets and whatever. Like, I'm not a vet. I don't claim, I'm not even a tech, but you hear enough stories to where you can start being like,
Well, we can kind of assess if it's an emergency and if it's not. And I can identify Giardia by the smell. There's a certain smell consistency, right?
Yeah. So, you're like, unfortunately, I know all about this.
I know about it. But that brings up another point that, believe it or not, is hotly debated in the dog trainer world. Is if dogs should be spayed or neutered. The health implications of when. And I know when I first started with Puck, I think you guys were spaying and neutering much younger.
12 weeks. As soon as it could be done.
And we had a litter of females that all got spay incontinence. And then we kind of reassessed that and moved it to 6 months. And people are like, well, why can't you just move it to a year? Give people a voucher and they can go get it done when they see fit with the dog. This is coming from a rescue view, as that would be a complete and utter disaster on many fronts, right? Because we can't legally adopt out in the city of Albuquerque without the dog being spayed or neutered. So until the dog is adopted out, we're financially responsible for the medical care for the dog. I mean, I don't know if we would have to be necessarily, but we do, because it technically belongs to us.
That is true. And we could draw a line saying this is the only medical we're going to cover.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're to that point, but that could be something. And quite honestly, I think PACA could adopt out without spaying and neutering, because everyone we adopt to wants their dog sterilized.
Yeah.
Now, when it gets done, may be up for debate, but they all want it done.
Yeah.
I think that just statistically, and just if you look back, in areas where shelters do that, it's a higher kill shelter. Mm-hmm. And I think that, especially if you're not charging an adoption fee and you're not screening people and all they have to do is literally walk in
the door.
And the fact that all of the shelters, even though they require that, the number of animals that are unwanted and that are getting dumped at the shelter is, I think, why they just felt like, hey, this is like an epidemic.
Yeah.
And the best thing that we can do is try to make it a law and enforce it as much as possible.
And I think we see a much different segment of the pet ownership population
100%.
than like
100%.
Dog trainers would. Because you're already getting the cream of the crop of the dog owners that will spend money on training their dog. And so those people are probably more likely to be more responsible.
Right.
More invested in their dog. We see... I don't know. Today, someone just found a puppy wandering around Albuquerque. Right. And the mom and the other pup ran away. So obviously that dog isn't sterilized.
Right.
And then her puppies are like roaming the streets. They get hit by cars. They get killed. They get dumped in a river, thrown out of cars.
Right.
So this is a much different, let's say, reality than a lot of people see. And I think that colors my view on spay and neuter, because we see firsthand what happens when communities don't spay and neuter their dogs.
Right.
It is like horrific. Valencia County has been euthanizing 300 dogs every month for like a year now, I think.
I just can't believe we can't get caught up. I can't believe how easy it is to slip. And that's kind of been a topic of discussion. It's just like, I'm so sick of hearing about COVID and why we still are having problems from what happened, but it is really true. I mean, a lot of people couldn't get vet care. There's people that consequence.
We'll talk about him later.
Yeah. But, essentially, if you have two female dogs that come into your household and they're both pregnant and you don't know it, and they have litters and you don't do anything and you're feeding, and then you have unsterilized animals and then they're just mating, like, you can have a huge problem in 2 seasons.
Yeah. Like
right?
A year.
Yeah. And I just think that amazes me that people cannot project in their minds out that far of what is naturally going to occur.
Yeah.
And that they're supporting it and they're getting in a bad place. And I think a lot of hoarding might start with people just trying to do the right thing, but then they have a lack of resources.
Yeah.
And then it gets to be a very, very, very bad situation.
Yeah, it gets to be from spaying and neutering one dog to spaying and neutering 20 dogs.
Yeah.
And then the cost of that is $8,000.
Right. I know.
So.
And then the other thing that happens with hoarding is that those dogs don't have individual connections with the human.
Yeah.
It's very separated. And so they're not walking on leashes. They're not getting potty trained. This is a very difficult population to integrate into normal life. And it's amazing how many calls you get. I don't know. I get emails. Hey, I know someone that has 20 dogs. They need help, but they have no transportation. They're out in the middle of nowhere. They're barely feeding them. We just need someone to come in and get all these dogs. And I'm like, that's ASPCA level. That is not like small PACA. I don't have paid employees to go pick up dogs. I mean, people think that I do. Oh, I was driving through town. I was passing through the reservation. There's a dog at the gas station on the corner of blah, 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 blah. Can you go pick it up? Unfortunately, I cannot. If you can bring it to me or whatever. I mean, it's just like, I can't do that. I can potentially help. Honestly, a lot of the res dogs that we've gotten are such good dogs. They have really good temperaments and often have lots of different breeds in them. Like, we're kind of seeing how the stability, what kind of stability can come from being so mixed. Yeah.
How long have you been in rescue now?
I did a short stint before PACA at Animal Humane and decided that there's no way I could walk through kennels every day. I just thought it was too sad. I mean, I was I don't know, in my 20s. And I just couldn't handle that. And then so I worked at the thrift store, the Animal Humane thrift store, just organizing and doing stuff. And I was like, oh, but I really want to have direct impact with dogs. So I just started Googling. Someone told me, like, there's something called foster care, foster-based animal rescue. I'd never heard of this. I'm like, oh. And so I happened to find PACA, and then they got me on fundraising, which is not really my strong strength, but I just wanted to participate. And then Margaret and Cynthia kind of scooped me under their wing, and then I became like more kind of operational. And then there was a time for many, many years, probably 15 years straight, that I basically, ran clinic. And that is a challenge.
You learn a lot of skills.
Yeah.
Running an adoption event. Honestly, like being in rescue has taught me a lot about how to organize and work with people and tell them things they may not want to hear, but yet hopefully not totally offend them or piss them off.
Yeah. So. I actually think that's really one of your strengths. And I think you need it as a trainer too, because these people love their dogs, and sometimes you say things that they don't, like you said, they don't want to hear. I think a lot of times they may get like super defensive, and then other times maybe people swing the other way where they just don't even believe what the actual problem is a problem. Like, this is what you think is a problem is not really the problem. It's actually this over here.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? And I think our clinics being outside by a busy street, it's great with the shade, but that's a whole nother level of danger that can happen with leashes that aren't secure or just anyone, random people just walking up and open up cages. Like, they can just pull dogs out with it's just like you got to step back and just almost, I would be not even in it, because you can't watch it when you're in it. So I would be like, you guys talk to the people. I'm going to have like a 360 view from back here and try to catch problems before they even happen. But I just got kind of militant in it because there were like some scares. Dogs were literally lost. The owner, like people that had little dogs on leashes. Yeah,
I was going to say, it wasn't our dogs.
It wasn't our dog. It was the people coming up. One time there was this little cute little Chihuahua thing. Let that dog run up to a crate. A big dog barks at it. Dog freaks out, slips out of his leash, and then bolted up the street.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and so people think you're like an ass when you're just trying to help them kind of approach or warn or what. Someone's dog almost got hit by a car last week. Like, I don't really feel like I need to explain that to you of why I'm acting like this. Is just how it is, but I'm not just making stuff up.
Yes, we've seen things happen. This is why we are the way they are.
Right.
We are, right?
Right.
Like, we're not just paranoid. Yeah. I don't remember even what happened, but one time someone brought their dog up and it slipped out of the collar and it was running around the parking lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, don't get hit by car.
Please
get hit
do
by
not
car.
Get hit.
Even though it's really not our responsibility. It's not our dog. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of have to have your peripheral vision
right
going, and you have to be aware of 10 things happening at once.
Yes.
There's someone meeting that dog over there, and there's one kid sticking his hand in a crate over here, and there's no parents,
or getting a stick and poking it in. Is anyone supervising this child or trying to pick a puppy up by its tail or its ear? Like, no, we cannot do these things.
Or even people wanting to hold puppies and then maybe they try to walk off with one.
Yes, this also. Right.
It taught me a lot, not about people, but also I would advise any dog trainer, go and work at an adoption event, because you got to handle. We don't have that many dogs, like maybe 10 max.
Right.
You have to learn how to work with all these dogs that you don't know. You're basically just given a leash, and you have to get them to calm down usually because they're too excited, or maybe they're trying to react to all the other dogs there. Or you have to do this all in public, which it's not that I would do anything different if I wasn't in public, but it makes you aware that people are watching what you're doing. And I'm trying to get a dog in a crate that doesn't want to go.
Yes.
Or something like that, and just have to figure it out. And you have to learn to assess dogs pretty quick in what will work for that dog.
Right.
Whether it's going to take food to go in the crate, or you just have to kind of shove it in, or Or if you just say, nope, you got to go in, it'll just walk in.
Right.
There's a lot of skill. It's kind of like speed dating, sort of.
Oh, that is such a good analogy. That is, yes. And 10, I think, is a more manageable clinic. I remember clinics with Margaret where we'd have 25 plus dogs, where we were like telling people, we were pulling crates out of people's sheds that hadn't been in use for a while, like trying to count, do we even have enough crates? Sometimes we would have to have some dogs even being held out because we didn't have enough crates, and then we would do kind of like a rotation. But when you were talking about that, I'll just tell you this, like, this is a hilarious story. I thought it was so funny. So it's a really busy clinic, and we have, this is years ago, I think, we had several little dogs that didn't live together, and this was a very busy clinic. It was they were in a big puppy pen. And there was this little chihuahua that hadn't been neutered yet, and he was humping all of the females, and it was obnoxious. Like, he was told and told and told. And finally, I'm like, I'm done with this. And there's a huge audience, okay? Because everyone's looking at the cute little dog. So I step into the crate, and I was like, no. And I pushed him off. This dog flew at me, biting, and I batted it away. It was just my reaction. This little chihuahua went slam into the side of the crate. The audience was like, oh, it was like a huge, there was probably like 10 people that saw it. I'm like, oh, they were like, that lady just, I didn't mean to hit him that hard. I didn't think I was going to connect like that. But he was literally going to bite me. Like, he was flying through the air to bite. And because he didn't have any traction on anything, like my hand just whacking him, it was so embarrassing. But it was like, okay, he can't be in there. He's not going to be able to. He's not hurt.
There's a lot of fun things that happen there. Some of the biggest challenges we face, for me personally, it's just some days you're like, oh my God, I feel like I'm trying to plug a dam with like a little cork, right?
Yeah.
But also, we do see kind of the worst of like ignorant dog owners, neglect, abuse.
Yes.
Like just crazy stuff. So what do you think are some of the biggest challenges in doing this, especially long term?
I think one of the very honest things is that understanding that you're not going to save every dog.
Yeah.
And some dogs, it would be a waste of resources. Any kind of human aggression. I'm not saying I haven't done it. There was a solution to be found.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm going to try to do every day. And I don't feel like every dog is going to be saved or needs to be by me. And I think I kind of swallowed that pill. Some people can never get over that. Some people, it's just too sad for them to see this whole huge list. You can pick one.
Yeah.
But that one's going to get a great home, and that's fine. Like, that's enough of a win for me. So I think that, and then the next would be getting vet care. I think vet care has been really a challenge, especially for the public spay neuter program, affordable vet care for people. I think that if you don't get bids on hip surgeries or mass removal or some of the stuff that we do on a regular basis, dentals, that's another one.
Dentals.
Oh my gosh, all these little dogs. I don't know how many dogs have come in. I'm like, that dog needs a dental. We're going to have it under anesthesia. A lot of people don't do that, but this can prevent, there could be, the dog won't eat. There's rotten teeth. It can go septic. There's so many problems. And if you don't know how much that costs, I think you don't understand that it's a very expensive. Rescue is very, very expensive.
It's very expensive. As far as vet care, I don't know. We've been told, like, oh, we're just selling dogs,
Oh, gosh, right? I was like, lady,
But, there's no way you're ever going to make even the there's just no way, because even though, like, maybe one dog is totally healthy and you just break even on the adoption fee,
I got a $5,000 dog. Yeah, $5,000 dogs.
Yeah. Most dogs we get have at least worms or giardia.
Yeah.
And it may not even go away with the first treatment, so then we got to redo it. Yeah, surgeries, like, we just had a huge mass removed from a dog that cost, how much was that? Like $3,000 or something?
I thought it was closer to $5,000.
It may have been.
I think maybe it was the estimate was like $3,500 to like $55,000. I actually don't know where that ended up coming out. Then we did the hip.
Yeah.
Olive.
Yeah.
Where did that come out?
I don't know. but I think the estimate is $2,500.
Right.
So
right. And then we have our sanctuary dogs.
Right.
That's super fun. Those are always the highest expense dogs. Just I don't know. I think there are other rescues that do this, but just to like recap the sanctuary, sometimes if we get dogs that would literally be unadoptable, but it's a great home, but they're just not going to put in $200 a month. And the dog is great, and this usually is for a short period of time. It's like end of life care. Yeah. So like expensive medications. Like hospice. It's like a hospice situation. Or if they have something like very difficult to manage, like allergies, which needs like Cytopoint plus Apoquil plus special food. We won't buy the food, but we'll do the Cytopoint injection and the Apoquil. So there are some things and those dogs tend to be expensive.
Yeah. I mean, it's dogs that basically would be very difficult to find an adopter for due to the medical expenses. Because, let's be honest, end-of-life care is expensive.
It is.
It just is. And these dogs, they don't have any behavior issues typically. So it's
and they still have good quality of life.
Yeah, and good quality of life. Right. So what are we going to do? Just euthanize them because they can't find a home? I mean, I wouldn't feel great about that. So I like the sanctuary thing. I'm not saying you can come to us and ask us to pay for your dog's medical expenses. These are dogs that are in our rescue for various reasons.
Right.
The little old Chihuahua.
I mean, I never thought the dog would get a home. And we get the best home. A picture came with this guy. He gets to go everywhere in a carrying case. Yeah. This big guy with a long beard and whatever is carrying this 15-year-old Chihuahua around wrapped in a blanket with no teeth, tongue hanging out. And he was like, this dog is he goes everywhere with me. He's my partner. Yeah. And it's just so great. That dog came from the owner died. Yeah. It's amazing how often that happens. And I feel so bad. I think a lot of that is just like if I died, because I know you guys, there's like help. Or if the vice versa, if something happened, like we're in this, so we know that. But sometimes like there's a car accident or whatever, or a cancer, pancreatic cancer. Yeah. 6 months. It's hard to make all of the plans. It's hard to deal with the fact that your life is coming to an end and all that has, swirling around it on top of, and no one in my family will take my dogs. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it is amazing how many people die and their dogs have nowhere to go. Yeah. So it's another thing to think about. If you have pets, make plans.
Make plans.
Because if we weren't there, they'd be going to the shelter, and you probably don't want your pets to do that.
Well, and remember all those Chihuahuas we got when that woman doing rescue died?
Rescue, quote unquote. She had 40-some Chihuahuas in her townhouse. Yeah. But we took, 8? 8 of them?
That was on the news. Several groups had stepped up. I think they all went. I think someone went to Animal Humane. Yeah. And I think Lapdog took some. I think everyone took some.
And even the one that had the most health problems, we found a great adoptive home, but I don't think we paid for their... they took over medical care.
They did take over. Those people were fantastic. We find a lot of our people are fine taking over. I mean, it's in very rare cases that we're doing like a sanctuary type situation.
And that little dog had probably the best life he ever had those years he was in that home.
Yeah.
After the first owner died. A lot of dog trainers, and I get to see this because I'm on social media, they don't like to work for rescues. Let's just be clear. I don't work for PACA. I volunteer for PACA. Right. But they don't even want to work with them, right? Because of the drama. And I think our rescue is pretty drama-free. I mean, we have discussions and we have decisions to make, but we don't get knocked down drag-outs about it or anything. Right. And I also think because of that, we attract volunteers that are somewhat level-headed. What we really need is people that are kind of self-starters, right? That take some initiative. So true. Can do some things. Like we do a lot of things, but the fosters need to, let us know when their dog's sick. Take the dog to the vet. Come to adoption events. Do meet and greets and call potential adopters on the phone and that kind of thing. And that takes a lot of burden off of us. But a lot of trainers don't want to work with the rescues because they don't pay their bills. Vets also, right? They get burned by rescues not paying their bills. And so they don't want to do that.
I wonder, I don't hear about that part directly from the vets so much. I think we're really good at that. This is the other thing I think of. There's a lot of trainers that I wouldn't want to work with. So let's just be honest. So this is, it's people. I think I will say that some trainers, I feel like I get a little bit like of a control freak vibe from them.
No.
Yes. Amazing. Some are truly gifted, right? But some just really want, and then so like, I think you have an automatic like butting heads. I would not just go out and enlist the help of any trainer. I'd rather have no trainer than a bad trainer. I'll say that. But I think it took us, even with you, just a little bit of time to kind of get our groove, because there was like a little bit of pushback from some of the other volunteers that didn't want to hear about maybe some suggestions you had with their fosters. And I think maybe you were just like, look, at the same time, I don't need to win every battle.
Right.
Like, this dog is ultimately going to go to another home. As long as there's not a safety issue happening at clinic, do your thing. Call me if you decide that you would like help with this issue.
And I did learn, too, not to give unsolicited advice.
Right.
Because at first I'm like, oh, I know how to solve that. I just want to.
Right.
Like, I wasn't trying to be pushy. I was trying to help.
Right.
But that could come off differently. I get that. And I think I had to learn kind of how to balance that and not want to be in control of everything. Yeah, right? Because I can't be, and honestly, I shouldn't have to be. And I think we also started pulling easier dogs. And then that pretty much got rid of the need to even really consult a trainer for a lot of dogs.
Yeah, I think some of that's true. There are some people I'll never say no to. Like, I would never say no to Margaret. There are some people that have a blank check with me that, like, I love you and I will support any and all things
I on
that
the list?
You, of course, right? So whatever you need, like, hey, this is my new, I'm pulling Toby. Cool. Right. Okay, well, then we have a dog. It wasn't a question, and I don't question those people I also really don't a lot of times ask people to take dogs unless I think it's going to be a perfect fit for them. And sometimes there's just not openings. A lot of times our people are already doing their own kind of rescue. Yeah. They're the kind of people that will stop and pick up a dog on the side of the road. Now let me call on you for help and tell her that, this is what we got going on. Or they're going to the shelter. Or because you're in Las Vegas, you'll see dogs that are really worthy of being pulled. I mean, the only dogs we pull from the shelter are from you. Yeah. Really?
Well, that's because you don't want to go to the shelter.
I can't go. Dude, I can't go.
You told me once,
you're now, I can't walk through there.
You're like, I'm so glad you don't mind going because I don't want to go.
I don't. I have a hard time. Once I make an eye connection or have like a direct interaction with the dog, I'm like, let me figure out how I can try to help these people. Yeah. Sometimes, and that's what I tell other people too. Like, if I really can't help them, like, there's really nothing. You got to put together one email with your best set of pictures and your best set of facts, and you just got to blast that. Yeah. Because people need to see. Let me tell you what's not helpful. What is not helpful for someone to, I found a dog. Can you help me? Okay, do we have size? Do we have breed? Do we have age? Do we have anything? Because like, those are the basic questions that all my fosters are going to ask me. Just like if I called you, I'm not going to be like, hey, I have a dog. I'm going to have, because I have some parameters that some people want. Some people only want bigger. Some people want little. Some people want active. Some people want couch potatoes. Some people want puppies. Some people want old. I do want someone that will do mama babies outside of Morgan. Poor Morgan. I hope she never does another mama babies for like the next 5 years. Poor Morgan has been kind of through it with that.
Like 3 litters in a row.
Yeah. And then before that, Biggie, like a foster dog that's like for a whole year. Yeah. And I even asked her to take that one, so I felt bad. That was our first meeting. Like, okay.
But we got her in our rescue, so that was a bonus.
That is a bonus. But Morgan knows that she has a check.
So we really need people. We were talking the other day, and you said, I need solutions, not problems. Yeah. If we have volunteers that can say, hey, or even anyone that calls us and found a dog. I found a dog, but I can keep it for a day. I found a dog, but my neighbor's willing to take it. Right. Don't call us and say, I found a dog, I need it gone in an hour. Right. We can't help you.
Right.
It's like, what can you do to help us while we figure out how to help the dog? Those kinds of people are really priceless because they'll figure out the solution to the problem before they even call us and say, hey, what do you think about this?
Right. Yeah, that's already half the battle. Like, I got the vet covered. I got posting covered. I got screening covered. The house.
Yeah, where it's going to stay.
That's the other 50% that I got to be like, when people are talking about wanting to foster and stuff, it's just like, hey, this has got to be a little bit of a commitment. I mean, yes, if it's a safety issue, I'm going to automatically remove the dog. But the dog's fine, and you just wake up one morning 2 days after you started fostering, and you're like, I'm going to get too attached. I'm going to want to keep it. Come pick up this dog. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah. And people need to realize, like, we can't just magically create a spot for dogs.
Yes.
Well, I think you and I, too, we can be pretty honest with each other about what we're able to do, what we can accomplish, and then we try and figure out how to work around that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm going out of... And you're pretty good at saying what your limits are, and then we can figure out how to work around it or say, well, we just can't help this dog at that point.
Right.
Because that happens sometimes. Sometimes we can't because we don't have any space. One thing, too, I know over the years we were talking, and you said that you like to bring people on that have skills you don't have, so you form a better team.
Totally.
I'm assuming you do that in your work environment, too.
I think in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like with my partner.
Right.
I want to have, I mean, it's just, if we do all the same things perfectly, there's going to be holes.
Yeah.
And I just think you're stronger. You don't have to do everything, but then you can learn a little bit about that. I'm not trying to be a trainer, but every time we're together, I might take a little nugget of like really great information that I'm like, oh, let me apply that. Or, I mean, now we're even training my dogs, but before that, I just feel like that just helps us all get to a higher level of understanding and like a higher level of excellence.
But you're also not threatened by that. I haven't noticed it.
No.
A lot of people would be. I like people that are competent. Each one of our fosters kind of has their own type of dog that they're good with.
Yes.
You know, like your mom has a certain personality that she's really good with a certain kind of dog.
Right.
And so we try to maximize on their strengths. And that also makes their life easier when they have that dog in their house. We have other fosters that are pretty active, so they could handle a different kind of dog.
Yes.
Building this team that does, and we're a small team, but we're a good team. I have an art background, so I can do some graphic design stuff. Oh yeah,
and no one is doing that. Totally.
Yeah, lay out our newsletter and do little cute promos on Facebook and stuff. I'd love if anyone else wants to do that, but
I know.
It's like finding people that have those skills and just kind of combining it versus like if you wanted to do everything your way, you wouldn't be able to do much because it's too much for one person.
It is too much. And honestly, I don't want to fight. I don't have to win every battle. It's just easier to kind of like go along and get along and get to a happier place. And then when people are doing things they're good at, they're happy. But I also am like respecting like that you don't necessarily want to exhaust people's strengths. Like you don't want to exhaust even your own gifts. Like just because I'm great at something doesn't mean I want to be...
Do it 24/7.
Exactly. And I think sometimes people don't understand how much the phone rings. I don't feel like it's my job to explain it, but sometimes I'll get a call on something and these people don't understand. I just had 5 other calls. One, a dog just got hit by a car on the street, whatever. Like, this is an emergency. What do you think? Or from a dog, whatever. Now someone else is going on travel or whatever. I mean, it could just be any number of things and they all kind of come at the same time. And sometimes I just had to take a breath and remember that the word rescue, you're already going to be in some kind of crazy town. Right. Like by definition. If I don't know let's look up the word rescue, but by definition, you're already in crazy town. It's just like, let's try to limit the other aspects, like circling around that within us. Otherwise, we just go crazy. And that's probably why I haven't really burned out. Yeah. It's because you just got to learn how to do it smart.
Yeah. Delegate. And I mean, Margaret was helping a ton with before she died. And then we kind of dispersed her responsibilities among a few other people.
Well, Trish was a loss too. I mean,
that's true.
And she was a networker. Trish was my big networker. Man, she knew all the players at all the rescues. Yeah. talk to them. She knew all the people doing like responsible transport and other rescues in other states that maybe we could take dogs. And that really, I am not a networker in this mode. That's something that really probably hasn't. She had the time.
Yeah.
And that was like her love. So I guess that's maybe one thing. You're networked through like your old sources and then through a lot with trainers, but not to the level that Trish
I don't
was.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know like other rescues that much in the area, which is shelter people a little bit more, but try to stay to myself.
I know.
Which is
I know. I do.
Like, I don't want to be well known for this.
Yeah.
Someone was telling people to call me directly about dogs that needed rescue, and I'm like, no. Like, go through the proper channels. Don't give out my phone number.
It was so funny because, like, I saw that post, and I'm hardly ever on Facebook, but I saw that post, and I had just given that lady your number. But then I'm like, no, is Julie talking about me right now?
No.
I know, but it ran through my head. I'm like, no, but I did. To be fair, Julie and I did have a conversation. I did say, hey, I'm going to give you the lady that was driving her dog to Michigan.
No, that wasn't it.
It was just that same day, and I'm like, oh, shit. Okay.
No, because you asked me first.
I know.
And that was kind of a special case. Like, that was a lady who knew how to solve problems.
She was awesome.
She took it upon herself. She wanted to help this dog, and she figured out how to do it.
That was amazing.
And we could help her a little bit, which I was happy to do, to give her tools to get the dog to Michigan safely. I mean, good. Promised land, Michigan, out of New Mexico, right?
Yeah. She couldn't believe it. She's like, I cannot believe the state. Some people are shocked that come from other states. I
was shocked.
Yeah, I know.
When I moved here.
I know.
I don't think I had ever seen, like, free-roaming dogs before.
Right.
I'm trying to, maybe if we went on, you know what, I had when we went on vacation to the Caribbean and then Greece, there's free roaming cats. Oh,
yeah.
But I don't know if I've even seen that before. And because I had only seen that in second or third world countries, I was like, where have I moved to?
Yeah, I know. What else shocked you besides that part? I mean, do you think we generally the level of care is lower?
You mean in the shelters or pet care?
Pet. The client
I think there's a great disparity. So
that's a great way to say it.
There's people, of course, in New Mexico that love their pets. And there's people that don't have a lot of money that love their pets. So I've had to learn.
Right.
Because we moved from Washington, D.C. It's very affluent.
Right.
Like the whole area is pretty affluent.
Right.
Just because people don't have fancy things for their pets doesn't mean they don't love them, right? There's different ways to care for your pet.
Right.
Maybe some people keep their dogs outside, but those dogs might have a great life and have everything they need.
But not chained.
Not chained.
Yes,
that's different,
I think
right?
is that more here? I mean,
I'd never seen that before either.
Yeah.
Drove down to, where was I driving in Valencia County somewhere, and I'm driving along this road, and there's free roaming dogs, and then there's chained dogs.
Yep.
And, like, maybe they have a dog house, maybe not. Maybe the dog house is destroyed and it's chewed up. And I'm just like, this
I've literally
is crazy.
seen dogs, like, chained to a tree.
Yeah.
Like, that's your shelter.
Yeah.
And then they dig a big hole.
Yeah, and I think people... So I just interviewed B from the Las Vegas shelter.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think people they don't know what's going on here. The state of care for animals here is, I'm sure people aren't treated much better because those two things go hand in hand. And if you don't have empathy for an animal, do you have empathy for a human?
Right.
Really just bizarre how disposable animals are here.
Right.
Just like, oh, the dog ran off. Well, we're not going to bother to go find it or get it from the shelter, or just the level of cruelty here, I think, is really something. I don't know any precise statistics.
Yeah.
But I've never seen the kind of cruelty that I've seen here. And there's people that are like, oh, well, just because the dog's afraid doesn't mean it's been abused. I can say that I've gotten more dogs in my home that I think have definitely been abused because they show cowering from very specific things.
Broom handle,
Broom handles, hairbrushes, books.
Yeah.
Where if you don't have those things in your hand, they're fine.
Right.
And to me, that says, there's something going on, right? The dog, Chardonnay ran when she puked on the floor,
yeah,
she ran to the other side of the room all scared and peed. So that told me maybe someone had really punished her for puking in the house. Just stuff like that. I think it goes along with like socioeconomics and education about animals and maybe the resources people have to maybe hire a trainer or take an online course or go to an obedience class. I mean, whatever it might be.
Right.
With the animals, but also the examples that are set, frankly, by the governments in New Mexico don't say that we value animals. Because even though there's laws on the books, those laws aren't enforced.
That's true. That's why I think to some degree that like juvenile program was really good, kind of just by definition to trying to link. Because some of these kids might have come from homes where like, oh, you don't tie your dog to a tree and give it, random food and water. Like we've always done that.
Right.
Like it just wasn't in their mind. That's just how they grew up. And then just to have another conversation, I think is important. And education is not something that we do strongly. I mean, we educate through paying for spay neuter for people, but am I out campaigning? Am I out talking in schools? No. I think there are other people that do that. I think APNM does education. I mean, everyone kind of has their things that they do well. APNM has good lobbying. I think all of that is good. It's just our very small. I can take a dog straight from hell and give it a fabulous home. Yeah, I have done that successfully for a very long time. Not a lot of them, but the ones that we get in our system are quite lucky to be in.
I would say now, like, we're more apt to take a cruelty case or a medical case than we don't take aggressive dogs.
Right.
If they're super dog aggressive to the point where they're a danger to just walking the dog around the neighborhood, we might decline, but we're pretty strict on human aggression.
Totally. It's not safe. And I'm sure other people that are in rescue that are listening to us have had this experience before, but the long email about all the great things about this dog and the close is, but it's bitten 5 people and it attacked my daughter last night. But please take it. And it's just like, but who else is going to deal with this? And it's like, I've had this dog from a puppy, and I'll answer that email.
Yeah.
I will give an honest answer, and I copy you a lot of times. So you can see the kind of bullshit that's, being directed, but it's just, hey, you need to euthanize this dog. First of all, this cannot be anyone else's problem, and no one is connected to this. You can get a dog for free at any shelter, and that's a little puppy and has no problems. Right. So you're asking me to ask a foster. Oh, I know you'll have a foster home that will really be able to work with it. What? Who are these people? This is
the myth, the magical myth. People think rescues have some kind of magic. They can transform dogs into Lassie.
Right.
By some, I don't know who, like a trainer. Well, any ethical trainer is going to tell you that dog probably won't become Lassie and may always be a liability. And then maybe we have some magical farm or sanctuary.
Right.
Oh, well, we've rescued dogs from sanctuaries that weren't sanctuaries. They were horrible hoarding places.
Yes.
That place all those dogs came from was a registered 501c3.
Right. I mean, honestly, why have you had that dog around your child? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You can't let it get to that level. Look, if someone wants to take on that for themselves, that's fine.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't think to request that someone else put that into their household. Don't ask someone else to do what you
aren't willing to do.
Right. I have a big problem with that.
Yeah, and it's like, well, would you want your sister that has kids to adopt this dog? Right. I mean, who do you want to adopt this dog? Where we don't have a line of single men that have no visitors.
No visitors. They're ex-military. I mean, whatever.
Yeah. Honestly, usually people that have had a difficult dog don't want another one.
Agreed.
Myself included. Me actually, too. Right?
I know.
And I'm talking difficult as in aggressive. I'm not talking difficult as in they're fearful and need rehab or
sure.
Anything like that. We take lots of dogs like that. Now you have 2.
No, I have 2.
But they're making really good progress.
They are. Yes, and sometimes also another word of caution, sometimes you just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Sometimes in rescue, you end up with something that just some colors come out, and most of this happens with puppies, litters of puppies.
Yes.
Young litters of puppies that when we got 10 puppies, we're posting these puppies at 6 weeks, right? And sometimes it doesn't all come out.
Yeah. And they don't get adopted until 8, just for anyone listening, but we start posting at 6.
Right, because we say no more than yes. I'm not like a cool puppy. I gotta say no. Okay. I want to live in an apartment all day and attend medical school. No. No, ma'am.
I do remember that.
Not today. Yeah, there's that. But sometimes some behavioral things don't come out.
Yeah.
When do you think they start coming? Like 6 months? Like, what is your professional opinion on this? When are you going to... Like, you may see tinges, but not full on. What do you think?
Yeah, well, and this is where I think evaluating for temperament is not 100%, but it's better than nothing.
Right.
If you have a litter of puppies, and some puppies, there's usually 1 or 2 that maybe need a more precise placement than others.
Okay.
I'm trying to think the last time, though, we had like full-on aggression.
Not aggression. It was more like fear things.
Oh, well, that...
Fear, but then remember it turned into that... Remember that one puppy that we got from... There was those 2 puppies from the res, and they ended up putting her to sleep. And you didn't really meet those puppies.
Yeah.
Morgan's friend fostered, and then and they worked with you. Like, they did diligent work.
Yes.
And it just became unsafe.
Well, so they told me... And you're right, I never really met those puppies. I saw them at an adoption event. They told me they saw it very young in her, but they didn't consider it to be a serious problem because she was still a puppy. So she would outgrow it, right? So, and usually I can see tinges, and sometimes there's dogs that I tell you, I'm like, I don't know why, but I don't like that.
Right.
I think that dog might be a problem.
Right.
There's that one that was Stella's sibling that went to Arizona. And I took her to adoption event with another group, and I said, she didn't do anything wrong, but I don't know why. There's something off about this dog. And turned out she turned around and had some pretty serious aggression.
That whole litter. That's sad.
The level of responsibility we can take as a rescue, I think with puppies, is a little bit limited. We try to assess the temperament of each one, and maybe some are better with kids. Like that, we definitely try and screen for, are they very tolerant? You can only do so much, and the one we had big concerns about, you ended up keeping.
Oh, yeah, that's true. The last one. Okay, but then, so I think there is something to be said, just in general, because we do not ignore these things.
Yeah.
If you see this as a puppy, it is probably not going to go away on its own.
Right.
Sometimes I feel like other dogs in the pack can help. Do you generally just think you got to address it? I mean, how often do you think statistically those problems work themselves?
Probably very, very few.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people live with a lot of behaviors from dogs that I wouldn't want to live with.
That's true.
And they may not even see it as a problem either.
That's true.
We're super lucky here because most of the dogs we get are really nice, and most of the puppies we get are super nice. The fear that I find from like when we adopt out puppies and then they bring them back to adoption event to get their vaccines.
Yeah.
I think is by 1, not exposing the dog soon enough to things and coddling it. Whereas maybe that puppy had just a little insecurity, and if you would have socialized it properly, taken it out on leash to parks and stuff, and this is where people go against what I tell them, and again, I can't control everyone, but I tell them after that second vaccine, I'm like, get that puppy out to low-risk places. Well, my vet said I have to wait until they get the rabies shot at 6 months. Well, but then it's too late. The socialization window ends at 4 months of age to really be able to make a huge impact.
Right. And isn't that, remember when you went to Europe? I don't know where you were, but you did a whole kind of section on dogs.
Yeah.
Because they take their dogs everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah, I think you had this like huge golden retriever that this like 4-year-old girl was walking effortlessly. They're all at the cafes.
Yeah.
And I think we just don't behave like that as much, right? Like, wasn't it different there? Did you?
Well, there's so many differences. And again, I haven't lived in Germany for a long time, but when I was in Italy, there's actually laws in Italy that they cannot ban animals from any apartments. Any living places have to rent to animals, people with animals. And I don't remember what it was, and maybe it was just in Florence, but they have to allow them everywhere. Most of those dogs were purebred and bought probably from very good breeders. Because in Germany, they have very specific rules about what you can call your bread. If you put this much flour, this much X number of grams of this flour and X number of grams of this flour. They don't have shelters. It's a much different mindset about animals.
Wow, that's crazy. Even the bread, that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
But I know, yeah.
And people are like, oh, well, they don't spay and neuter dogs in Sweden. Well, hello, we're not Sweden.
Is that true?
Yeah. A lot of dogs in Europe aren't spayed or neutered. They're raised differently right from the get-go. If you have a dog in, which country was it? I did some research. You have to pay almost $300 a year for a license to have a dog.
Interesting.
So that person's going to look at that animal a little differently than someone who goes and gets it from the shelter for free.
Or the back of a pickup truck.
Back of a pickup truck in the Walmart parking lot.
Yep.
We can't really even compare our society to that as far as I'm concerned. And people use it for all kinds of things. Like in Germany, I know they believe in shame. If you cross the street if you're walking and you cross the street and the walk light is red, they will publicly yell at you.
Yeah.
You have to wait for the Grunermann. And all Americans find this out when we go to Germany because we're used to jaywalking, right? We walk against the light. We don't even think about it.
Right.
It's a very different society. I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing that they hold each other accountable for things.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, honestly, I have gotten calls from people saying, can you help me get this dog out of this backyard? The owner is beating it. We can see this happening, but I'm so scared of this person. Right. He's like a dangerous individual. In fact, I looked up the rap sheet and he has criminal record. I'm like, how is this guy even on the street?
Yeah. Well,
and it's unfortunate because even if you get that dog, they're probably going to get another dog. Yeah. But in other places where that would be so socially so unacceptable, it's possible that people wouldn't even try to do these things. Yeah. I think there is a lack of political will and there is a kind of a
complacency.
Yes. To where people are like, oh, that dog's chained. That's too bad. I mean, I personally have purchased dogs.
What all have you done?
Liberated some particular dogs. And unfortunately, they'll end up getting another dog sometimes, sometimes not. I mean, it's hard.
Well, you remember...
It's also dangerous to try to approach some people, Yeah. Dangerous.
Tilly and Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
And that was actually... That person lived near where you live now.
Really?
So every time I drive to your house, I go past their street.
Really? Yeah. Yeah, that was weird.
So I went to this house, and I don't even know how we found out. The guy called us, I think, to take these dogs.
It was through Trish. I remember, I think Trish sent us out to, she's like, hey, we got to check out this situation.
Yeah. And I went out there, and these dogs had basically been living in a 5x5 pen for years. They did let them out to go to the bathroom, and the guy was very weird. Very, you just get, doing this, you also kind of... I learned to listen to my instincts about people too, right? You get that little spidey sense that's like, there's something off with this guy. And he had a family, which made me was even scarier, but I wasn't there for them. I was there for the dogs. And we ended up finding fosters for them. Your mom took Jackson, but I made sure to get that pen out of his house. And I told him that I've always wanted one and that could I buy it from him? Because I really wanted one of these to foster puppies in. And he said, oh, you know what? He said, I'll donate it to the rescue. And I was like, wow, that's smart. So great.
Oh, man.
At the time, my goal was to get the dogs out of there and get that pen. I didn't care what I had to say or act like to do it. That's just one.
Didn't Kendra get Tilly?
Because I went out of town and she fostered her and or kept her while I was out of town and she never left her house.
Both those dogs had really happy lives after that.
Yeah, they did. And they were good dogs.
They were good dogs.
What are some other crazy things? I mean, Tiger King comes to mind. That guy with the freaking dumpster at the dump. He was trapping dogs in the dumpster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and then just recently, Pajarito Mesa.
Right.
Those are some great dogs. It's so unfortunate because some really good dogs come from those really bad cases.
Yeah.
Not necessarily Tiger King. Those dogs they were just too scared. I think they could have been. They just needed so much work.
They needed a lot of work.
So much work. I mean, the only good thing was those puppies. We were able to get those puppies.
Yeah.
But that was only successful. And, it's unfortunate because they didn't stay with us to do all of the fixing, which we were going to do. Mm-hmm. And I bet you they're right back where they were.
Yeah.
I think that that's why they stopped contacting me, because they were embarrassed because they had a pregnancy. After Darlene had been telling them, you've got to get all those females done.
Right.
We've got to do all the females.
Right.
We'll pay. I don't know what their problem was. It's weird. There's something psychological with the hoarding. And then sometimes it kind of turns into no one can care for this dog better than me, even though this dog is starving, totally neglected medically. But in their minds,
the dog is, it's almost like they're a little out of touch with reality.
Right.
That place I went out to. And I mean, that lady had no idea what was actually going on. Zero. So she didn't think she was doing anything wrong. So then you have a lady, I was watching puppies die right in front of me, and we couldn't do anything about it because the only things we could do there are feed and water those dogs. We told her, hey, those puppies are dying. And she's like, no, they're not. They're walking around fine. And they were laying there dead. I mean, she really didn't.
Holy crap.
No.
Where were they dying? In Parvo?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think Parvo, because none of the other dogs had it. I mean, maybe they were... Well, the moms weren't getting a lot of food, so that or water.
Oh, God.
That was an extreme case, but the dumpster guy was another strange one. They say they're not always men, though. I don't want to say, we're talking about the guys. But
that's true.
We had that lady show up that was living in her car at an adoption event and had that dog she needed to find a home for, but that dog was so... completely feral or aggressive, I don't remember which, that there was no way we could have helped her at that point. And I eventually got that dog back in her car, but do you remember that?
I do not remember that. I think I must block some of this stuff out. I'm just I never want to think about that again.
And then how did you get Freya? What's the story of Freya?
Well, someone had emailed saying, my neighbor's abusing these dogs. Basically, can you talk him into giving him up? And I'm like, send me a picture. And they looked really big in the picture. So she sends me a picture of 2 blue pit bulls. And I was like, I don't have any open foster right now. And she was like, I'm feeding them. So she was putting water and food over the fence. Yeah. Because it was her neighbor. And then I called her back. And I referred her just because I thought it might be the type of dog I might like. It turns out that one day she caught the neighbor at kind of a weak point, and he was like, you can have the dogs. Yeah. And she took him straight to the shelter. It was the day before, and I just happened to call her. I'm like, hey, whatever happened? She's like, they're at their shelter. I'm like, what's their impound number? The one was... I thought pregnant and immediately adopted. I was wondering if they euthanized her, but it said adopted. And then you went and got Freya and you were like, do we want to take her? Either way, because I had to put a rescue hold. And I said, well, we're obligated now. Yeah. Let's deal with it. And she was on her best behavior. Remember we had video of her, even with the UPS guy? None of her fear was coming in. She's gotten more, I feel like she's gotten a little more fearful. And it might be because she's at my house when I have that much visitors and she didn't go out much. Both of us live a pretty secluded life. Right. We live a bit out in the country, but she doesn't have anything extreme fear, I don't think. But if a plumber comes to the house... Dodgy is can you pet me? He's all up in their business, too much in their business. Right. Freya will back up. She don't want no one reaching down for her or trying to pet her. She'll kind of circle and she'll kind of do a low bark. and whatever. Like, I don't think she'll bite anybody, and she doesn't like kids. She does not like kids.
Never tested
and that's
her
fine.
with kids.
Yeah. And I can deal with all of that. What's, difficult is to not be able to walk them together.
Well, maybe one day. I don't like to think about too much of the dicey stuff.
Totally. I agree.
And like the weirdo people on, I don't know, that one guy that came to adoption event and I told him the dog was already going to Colorado. And then,
I remembered this guy.
He started bad-mouthing us on social media. And
he said he got one of our newsletters and he was going to write a letter to every one of our donors saying that we discriminate. We're like, dude, this dog isn't up for adoption. Yeah. It was someone was just holding it out.
Yeah. It was me. Yeah, I mean, I was just letting it go potty.
That was so, people, sometimes people do want to argue.
Yeah.
Sometimes people want to argue with me, like when I tell them I turn them down for a dog. Yeah. Oh, they want to be, I do it sometimes if people are active military and they want well, no, this isn't going to be.
Well, or if they have little kids and the dog won't be good with little kids. Right. I've had that happen where they've actually complained about me to you, which I'm like, fine, go ahead. Is she going to fire me? Right. I mean, that's the one thing, right? If I tell you, hey, this happened, you're like, don't worry about it. I mean, you always support me.
Yeah.
So I think that's important too, though, is as long as your volunteers have a decent judgment, sense of things going on, try and support them because...
Totally. I do that with the fosters too.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes we might have a little bit of a conversation if the standards are just too high.
Yeah.
One of the requirements is that they brush their dog's teeth every night. I'm like, well, I don't personally do that. So, are you saying I'm a bad pet owner? Because, I run this rescue. So, those are the funny conversations. But a lot of times people are scared to foster because they feel like the dogs aren't going to go to good homes.
Right.
And so it's just you got to take that away. Hey, you can go on the visit. You can approve or not approve. And so many times that was first worry, I think, is she was worried that she's loving these puppies and then we're going to go. She keeps, those people text her pictures. Right. She takes care of those dogs sometimes when they go on vacation. She has realized that you can actually get, we're looking to go lateral or up. Never down.
Yeah. And honestly, because I have 3 dogs of my own, usually if my foster good dog goes to a home with only one other dog, they get a lot more attention at one time. So it usually works out pretty good. I've kind of accepted this. I try not to focus on this because, like you said, I think it will burn you out if you focus on all the bad stuff you see. How irresponsible people are.
Right.
And just all the bad stuff we see that's caused by humans, really, towards animals.
Right.
And I try to focus on, we meet some amazing people that have adopted some really special case dogs from us. And also all the volunteers and just people that generally, even the neighbors who are trying to help a dog next door to them.
Right.
Or something like that.
Right.
There are a lot of good people that want to try and do good.
Yes. And that's a great thing to think about because really we're always having happy endings. Every dog that's going to have a happy ending.
Not the massage kind.
Right. But we do meet incredible people. It can restore faith because for every bad, terrible thing that you hear, there's always that great adopter that's sending you pictures 5 years later.
Yeah.
That can't wait to tell you about one of these puppies, these people are we're going to take our dogs to Moab this weekend. I'm like, that's fantastic. Hey, my dogs want to go to Moab. I'm not doing that, but that's great. That's the kind of homes we want. People that are, it's a family dog. It's an interaction. We want the dog to be a part of the entire dynamic.
Well, and the lady whose dog just had an FHO and she hired vet techs to come check on the dog herself.
And that's a good point with that one because I think there is always something to say hey, don't predict the future.
Yeah.
Put it out there.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I am very surprised. A dog that I think, this is going to be a hard one to do. And then in less than a week, I just put it up and in 2 days we get an applicant and then it turns out to be great and all this is flowing along. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And you're doing the surgery. That's why I'm like, hey, let me not prejudge this. Let me not prejudge this particular situation for what it could turn out to be because I am always surprised. Anytime you feel like you have a 90%, then you always have the outlier. I'm open to outliers, universe of good.
Well, sometimes the good dogs seem to sit for a while. We're
And
like, why can this dog not get adopted?
Exactly.
It's kind of strange. So you never really, you just don't know.
And that's why when Foster's like, Helen, will I have this dog? Let me just tell you these 2 stories. Here's this fantastic dog that has not found a home, and here's this really hard case.
Last question. What have dogs taught you? And I know that's hard to just answer this simply.
I think the biggest thing is that a hammer is not the tool for every nail.
Right.
So you gotta be open. Like I have 2 complete opposites in dogs right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes your personality, you just kind of be like, hey, I'm gonna handle this in this way. And it's like, that's not how it has to be handled. So I guess it just reminds me, I think a lot the animals can be as unique and as much individuals as humans can. What about you?
I did a whole podcast on that.
Okay. All right.
People can check it out. Definitely they're individuals, and I think if we treat them all the same, we kind of undermine their individuality and their intelligence. Just like with kids or coworkers or anything.
Right.
You can't treat them all the same.
Right.
And we have one of your dogs who is more like we're doing more strict obedience with. And the other dog we're trying to calm down some anxiety and some insecurity while also teaching her like, hey, you can't bark at those dogs. You know, you have to look at that and kind of adjust things for each dog. And
the overall arching is they both need to learn how to manage their emotions. It's just differently. It was funny. So I just will say after our training session today, I was going through the line to get a breakfast burrito, and there was a homeless guy walking his dog off leash. And so Dodgy saw it right away, and he's like... He literally turned away. He's like, I can't look at it. If I know and I had the leash, I'm like, good boy, buddy.
That's good.
Don't focus.
Yeah.
That should be your first response. Turn away and ignore.
Don't look at that dog. Don't even look because it will bring out bad things in you.
Yes, this will go nowhere positive.
Thanks so much for doing this with me.
Thank you.
I've been wanting to get you to do this for quite a while. Finally.
I know. And we had a lot to talk about.
Thanks to Lanya for joining me for this podcast. I really enjoy working with Lanya. Her compassion, honesty, commitment, and care for the dogs really shines through. Without her, I don't think I would be in rescue quite this long. So we make a good team. I hope you all learned a little bit about things coming from the rescue view of the dog world and how we manage to make it through the day, because we can't turn a blind eye.